I have a confession to make. Since giving myself a book buying ban at the start of the year, following my purchase of literal heaps, I've broken it 4 times. In fairness, these weren't massive hauls like my typical purchases, and one was an ebook that didn't cost more than a couple dollars, but still, principally, the ban was broken. First, I relented when I realized that in preparing to read Rhythm of War, the 4th Stormlight novel, I didn't yet have the novella Dawnshard, which was a recommended read before it. So into the Amazon cart it went. Along with Dawnshard, prompted by an Amazon free trial, I broke the ban a second time when I bought the first 2 Dune novels, being swayed by the free shipping and my love of the movie adaptation. The third time I broke my ban was when I purchased Langston Hughes, The Negro Artist, and The Racial Mountain. My fourth, and what I hope is my last time breaking my ban, was my purchase of The Color Purple. I haven't seen either film, though I am interested in watching the original. But when it comes to books that have been adapted into movies, I seem to have a weakness. And too much hype around any book always gives me acute FOMO if I'm interested in the subject matter. I bring up these failures not because I want to beat myself up, but because I want to figure out what went wrong. To begin, we'll look at what the parameters for my ban were, and then reevaluate whether or not they actually work. Then we'll go over the revisions I've made to my plan in the wake of such failure, as well as what my triggers seem to be for breaking the ban, and what your triggers may be as well if you, like me, are struggling with a book buying impulse. First, we come to the rules I set for myself. At the beginning of the year, they were simple. I wasn't allowed to buy any more books until I had read 50 of the ones I owned. Books I'd already read or those taken from Kindle or the library wouldn't count, even if they raised my Goodreads score. Furthermore, when I did purchase books again, I would use only tip money to do so. Finally, in containing my spending habits, I tried to spend my fun money on something besides books, something I did manage in splurging on more art supplies I'll probably neglect to use. There were caveats. First, if I happened to be out with my family at Value Village or another thrift store, I could break the ban if the book in question was $5 or less, and otherwise only detrimental to the change in my wallet. Any book I was to purchase in a thrift setting, as with any visit to the bookstore, still had to be on my list of books I want, or I had to leave the store empty-handed. As established at this video's start, I failed that goal. After reading over 10 books, I succumbed and bought 5 more, though I mostly kept within my tip money budget. Only $5 or so of non-tip money was spent on the last breakdown. After the first major failure, I revised my goal. Instead of reading 50 of the books I owned, I'd now read 60 before I could purchase more. However, that also proved fruitless, as I was again swayed by new interests and the oh-so-tantalizing movie adaptation. As such, I need to revise the rules of my ban. Taking this into account, it's clear my original plan is not effective in curtailing my habits. If I couldn't make it through 20 books without breaking the ban, it's unlikely I'll be able to restrain myself for another 45 or so. Therefore, I've decided to take inspiration from another booktuber. Jesse the Reader, like most bookworms, also has a book buying problem, but his approach was to only buy a book once he'd read 3. For every 3 novels completed, he could then purchase another one. This, to me, sounds more manageable than what I was attempting. This isn't to say I'll go out and immediately buy a book every time I finish a trilogy, but by banking the books I'm allowed to purchase, I can assure I'll work through those I already have before splurging again. Since my typical book haul is around 10 books, I'd need to read 30 of those I possess to go all out. Framed in this way, the new goal isn't dissimilar to the old, but if an impulse buy comes my way, I'll be prepared, and it feels good to save up, so to speak, practicing self-control and proving to myself that I can behave. Of course, before we move on to what my book buying triggers are, I think it's important to acknowledge why I have bans. When it comes to the way I buy books, money isn't necessarily an issue, as I have kept, for the most part, to spending tip money and have watched my bank account grow in the meantime. I'm not concerned about blowing through all my money or launching myself into debt. Even the more pressing issue of space is a temporary concern, as I'll soon be moving, likely into a greater area which will be able to accommodate my stash. For me, it's about being able to set limits and stick to them. More importantly, it's about respecting the books I already have, and about not spending so much money in the first place, even if I have the money to spend. If I could hold onto my tip money, I'd be able to purchase other luxuries, like another tattoo, or to bolster an already growing savings account. My move is certain to disrupt cash flow for me, which means I'll need to adjust, at least for a period, to not having the additional money to blow through. By restraining myself, I want to avoid lifestyle creep. I don't want to take it for granted that I'll always have spending money for books, when I might face a few months without it. Furthermore, there are many amazing books waiting to be read, some of which I've owned for almost a year now. In respect to the books I already have, I'd like to appreciate what I own. As a quick aside, be sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this video. It's not enough to set goals though, as I need to know my triggers. We've already established that I'm a sucker for books that have been adapted into films. If a book is receiving a movie adaptation, that's social proof for me that the book is great, or at least likely to be enjoyable. As someone who does enjoy more books than not, it's rare for me to be disappointed by something, even when it's being hyped. However, this desire to read books which have been adapted for the screen stems from a greater problem, that of FOMO, or fear of missing out. When I see multiple people on BookTok ranting about the same novel, I'm pressed by a desire to join the conversation. Even if I don't plan to make content on the matter, I like to be able to comment or understand what everybody is talking about. It feels good to be part of the in crowd, and while I have no desire to be cool, I like to know what's going on. Part of why I finally read the ACOTAR books comes down to everyone going on and on about them. I wanted to know who the hell Tamlin was, and why everybody hated him. I wanted to know if I'd agree or disagree with the popular opinions people held about the series. In my defense, I'll still only buy and read something if I'm already interested in it. After all, there are plenty of popular books, like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo or Yellowface, which I have no desire to read at this time, simply because they don't fit with my tastes. Having read A Court of Thorns and Roses, along with its sequels, I have no regrets. I loved them, and the ACOTAR series is now one of my favorites. Still, this brings us to a second trigger of mine, the desire to try new things. It's been years since I've gone to the library, mostly because I found the commute overwhelming. When it comes to topics I've developed an interest in, it's not enough for me to dip my toes in. I'm the kind of person who needs to immerse myself in something, and the result is a long list of books. Ultimately, I seem to be a mood reader, and when it comes to whatever my tastes are at the moment, I'm obsessive. If I want to engage seriously with a topic, I need to burn my way through at least 3 books to feel satisfied because, for nonfiction in particular, multiple viewpoints to my mind are essential. All in all, my triggers are FOMO, a curiosity about new topics, and the attachment I form to those subjects and the books I read. By gaining access to a library again and potentially taking advantage of Kindle, I hope to spend less, at least as far as nonfiction goes, while still satisfying my curiosity. Moreover, when it comes to the fiction books I want to turn into a personal library, I hope to learn self-control by setting parameters which are more realistic to myself, as well as continuing to follow those rules which have worked for me. In reading so excessively in previous years, I've come away with a few lessons. Last year, I managed to exceed my goal of 100 books. And in the video on the left, I go over everything I learned through the experience. Thank you for watching, and happy reading!